China is already world leader in 5.5G, in digital applications, in electric vehicles, in many other cutting-edge technologies. All of that will be a basic driver for continued progress in China. The U.S. resilience has been a surprise during 2023, but it may mean that weakness is the surprise in 2024. Having the dollar as the reserve currency is a privilege. One shouldn't abuse the privilege. I would guess, while most of my colleagues in academia say that this will be many decades of dollar dominance, I would give it another 10 years at most.
Professor Sachs, it's great to have you join us today. I know that you have done extensive research into Chinese economic model. In comparison with the Western models, what aspect of the China's model can be shared with other developing countries, particularly countries in Africa?
Well, China clearly succeeded in making an economic framework that could produce rapid economic development over a sustained period of 40 years. If you compare China in 1980 and China today, it's of course two completely different economies, from poverty to enormous success, from quite basic economy to cutting-edge technology. And I often say to African leaders, look at what China did during the 40-year period, especially 1980 to 2020. This is what Africa should accomplish between now and 2063, which is the 100th anniversary of African unity. So this, I think, is the key point, that China provides a lot of guidelines for Africa on how to plan, how to make public investments in infrastructure, how to improve educational quality and healthcare. And all of this means that one can take inspiration from China and have confidence that Africa also can achieve rapid economic development.
The official data also shown that the Chinese economy grew 5.2% last year, despite negative pictures portrayed by the West over the past year. So what are the bright spots and perhaps some short-term challenges you observe in the Chinese economy right now?
There are lots of bright spots, and that is especially that China is advancing in technology, advancing in 5.5G. So this is a very sophisticated digital economy. China's advancing in zero carbon energy and other environmentally sustainable technologies. China's a world leader in electric vehicles, in the battery technologies, in photovoltaics, and in many other areas. These are very powerful bright spots. I would say that there are two areas of concern. One is internal to the Chinese economy, and that is the real estate market and the kind of business cycle in real estate of some overbuilding, some financial distress, which is not only real estate but also some local governments. This, I think, is an actual set of challenges, but not to be taken out of proportion. It's modest. The second is the U.S., which has been very aggressive against China, limiting China's access to the U.S. markets, taxing Chinese goods, trying to restrict technology flows to China. And so China's faced a real set of barriers by policies that I think are illegal, that the United States is undertaking against WTO commitments. I don't like the U.S. policies. But China has seen that its exports to the U.S. have really slowed down, and investments in China by U.S. companies really slowed down. This is politics. It's bad politics by the U.S., but it's real. So China needs to bolster its non-U.S. markets. It has to find other places to export, and that's where I think the emerging economies can really play a big role.
In the light of internal issues such as weak consumer confidence and weak demand in China right now, how can China address these concerns while advancing towards sustainable development?
First, I hope that China and the U.S. reduce the tensions. The United States should obey international law. It should follow proper trade practices. It should stop its unilateral attacks on China, because this is harmful for the U.S. as well as for China. But at the same time, China should continue to promote internationalization of China. But if the U.S. doesn't want it, finding other partners. This is where the BRICS is a very good dimension of China's politics and economic policy. The 5 BRICS will now be joined by another 5 countries, it seems most likely. That's a good sign. There are dozens of other countries that want to join the BRICS. Joining the BRICS also means joining the new development bank and expanding the role of the Shanghai-based new development bank, which is very positive development as well. The Belt and Road Initiative, in my view, is a very strong, positive contribution of China to regional and global development. So I would like to see that enhanced, not cut back, but even more financing. That helps to finance Chinese exports, but it helps to build infrastructure in partner countries as well. So I think that there are many things that China should do to make sure that the path of globalization, if not with the U.S., then at least with the rest of the world, is taking place.
Looking into the future, China is undergoing structural reforms to achieve high quality growth. What is your outlook for the 2024 Chinese economy? And in your view, what will be the key drivers for China's future economic growth?
Well, I try to look at a time horizon of 5 to 10 years. Short term, there are very specific factors always at work, financial markets or debt distress or fiscal policy. But looking over a 5 to 10 year period, it is technological advancement that is the main driver. China is already world leader in 5.5G, in digital applications, in electric vehicles, in many other cutting-edge technologies, increasingly in pharmaceuticals and biomedical technology as well. All of that will be a basic driver for continued progress in China. We just had the release of the scores of educational attainment across 82 countries that the OECD maintains. China's way up at about the top. That's very good too. Strong education, strong science and technology, strong application of science and technology to solving social challenges like environmental sustainability.
We just mentioned technology and perhaps global trade. So we see that US and Europe adapting protectionist measures, including raising tariffs, imposing sanctions on high-tech products, including chips. There were rhetorics, so-called de-risking or friendshoring. To what extent will this action further disrupt the global trade orders or maybe technological advancement?
Well, I think it's regrettable policies because I don't believe in such policies. I don't think that China's a risk, and so I don't think it needs de-risking. These are mainly protectionism policies, mainly advanced by politicians who are not very good at economics, but trying to appeal to particular electorates. But I think for China, part of the answer is to oppose these measures and appeal to WTO, appeal to global rules, and also bilateral negotiation, but also for China to develop good, strong relations with the rest of the world, because the U.S. can protect its own market, but competing in third markets, that's very hard for the U.S. The U.S. doesn't have companies that produce 5G or 5.5G like Huawei. So Chinese companies can outcompete the U.S. in most of the emerging economies when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to digitalization, when it comes to green technology, when it comes to electric vehicles. So the U.S. may protect itself, but when it comes to what is most of the world population, China will have big markets.
So one good example maybe we can mention is the Belt and Road Initiative. Or also recently, very hot topic, the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So despite this rising protectionism, how will the Belt and Road Initiative rebuilding trust on a global scale?
So Belt and Road now involves around 150 partner countries. It was just the third forum, which was the 10th anniversary of BRI. BRI has funded about $1 trillion of investments. This is energy, it's transport, it's fiber, really investments that the recipient countries need for their development. And China exports a lot of goods and services as the counterpart of those investments. So this is a win-win proposition. I'm a strong supporter of the Belt and Road Initiative. I would like it to be the cutting edge and the leading edge of the green transformation, because when we make investments in energy going forward, it should be in zero carbon energy. It should be clean energy. When we make investments in agriculture, it should be in high value agriculture, sustainable agriculture, precision agriculture. And so the Belt and Road should not only finance infrastructure, but it should finance green, technologically advanced infrastructure. That's good for China and very good for the recipient countries.
You have mentioned previously in an interview that the U.S. has weaponized the U.S. dollars, which is the global currency. So what do you think of the trend of de-dollarization and currency diversifications?
Clearly, the U.S. is accelerating currency diversification, because if you are a government that's not very friendly with the United States, they can take away your money. And so it's not only against Russia, but against Venezuela, against Afghanistan, against North Korea, and many other countries that financial sanctions have meant it's not safe to hold dollar assets. Now there's a lot of talk these days, we'll see what happens, where Europe and the United States are proposing not only to freeze Russian assets, which is illegal in my view, but they've done it, but also to seize Russian assets and give them to Ukraine. This is blatantly against international law, but we'll see whether the U.S. violates this law, because politicians sometimes don't operate with much self-restraint. In the context of this weaponization, the BRICS this year are pushing for alternatives to the dollar. And there's a working group that has been set up among the BRICS countries to come up with alternative payments mechanisms. These will be adopted, I believe, later this year when the BRICS countries meet in Kazan, Russia. This is a good thing for the BRICS countries. The U.S. brought it on itself. Having the dollar as the reserve currency is a privilege. One shouldn't abuse the privilege.
But obviously this process might take times, and considering the SWIFT payment system and the US dollar is still the main dominant global currency, right?
I would guess, while most of my colleagues in academia say that this will be many decades of dollar dominance, I would give it another 10 years at most.
So considering also China is the world's second largest economy right now, how do you envision the future for the international of IMB?
I believe that the renminbi will be internationalized. I believe there will be not only, as there is now, the experiment of a digital central bank currency for domestic use inside China, but also for international settlements. I think in the BRICS, there probably won't be a single BRICS currency, but there will be trade in BRICS denominations among the BRICS countries, and the renminbi will surely play a key role in that. The People's Bank of China will make swap agreements with the central banks of the other BRICS countries. China will be a market for selling bonds, maybe renminbi bonds, by sovereign borrowers. So I think a whole renminbi financial ecosystem will develop rather quickly.
So there are mixed views on the global economy right now. So do you still anticipate a recession in the US economy this year? And how will the sticky inflation issue continue to play out to affect the economy?
Of course, there's lots of uncertainty because of politics and because of the two wars that are raging right now, and because of environmental shocks as well. This will be another serious warm year and an El Nino year, and that means lots of environmental disturbances as well. The U.S. Medium forecast surely is no recession and continued growth, but I would say with a quite wide band of uncertainty. The U.S. Resilience has been a surprise during 2023, but it may mean that weakness is the surprise in 2024. So I'm not by profession a short-term macroeconomic forecaster, but I would say it's a period of quite high uncertainty right now because of geopolitics, because of wars and financial sanctions, because of environmental shocks, and because the U.S. has shown time and again that the business cycle is not so well predicted in the U.S. Currently, stock market booming, inflation seeming to subside. It looks like a reasonable year, but in the U.S. economy, we have a cyclical economy, and so I would not rule out anything.
You just also mentioned the worsening climate crisis. How do you perceive the future for sustainable development in this kind of context?
Sustainable development requires peace and cooperation. When we have ongoing wars and when we have great tensions between the major powers, the US, Russia, China, EU, you can't have sustainable development progress, and we don't very much. Of course, some regions progress, but a lot of the vulnerable regions, the poorer places, just feel crisis. And if we're going to solve our global problems, we have to stop making a bigger mess. And that means that we need cooperation among the major powers, starting with the US and China. And since I put the responsibility for this, especially on the US side, because of all the unfair trade practices of the US, I'm hoping that the US will understand that the current approach of trying to attack the Chinese economy may be good short-term politics, maybe not, but in any event, it's not good economics, and it really needs to be changed.